you, Patricia. Hey, I could give Mike a very, very grandiose introduction. Mike has been a longtime member of this club, and he is our stalwart when it comes to the Christmas party. When we used to meet live, Mike was always the penultimate guest, so to speak, and he would regale us with his humorous talks. And it was, again, we maybe we weren't too imaginative. You know, he used to always ask the membership, hey, what do you want to do for Christmas? Do you want me to do something a little different? And it's always no. We wanted to stay exactly the same. So we started with Noah Goodman, and we moved on to Heather Rogers, our magician, and then ultimately we came around to Mike, who would bring us home. So Mike, I appreciate you being here today, and also knowing that, you know, you just recovered from COVID, and you know, so still you managed to come and see us. So again, when they say the man who needs no introduction, Mike Pritchard needs no introduction from me. You don't need me to talk anymore. So Mike, you can take it away.
Thanks, Pete, very much. And to all of you Breakfast Clubbers, just so you know, 40 years ago, we were a very amazing group of men and individuals, many military officers, many high flag officers were there, some very heroic folks and wonderful men and women that did great things for America. And so I'm always honored to be here with this group and to share my love for San Francisco and the Bay Area and our lives. I wish all of you happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and be blessed in that way that we heard earlier. Just try and reach out and be kind to everybody. There are so many lonely and isolated folks out there. More than anything else, we need that unity, that what I call community unity of America. And that's where we take care of each other's hearts. We reach out. There's a line by, I was saying earlier, a great Supreme Court justice said, we don't stop laughing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop laughing. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. So all of us in that way have that opportunity. Now, for me, I spend all my time with children, and I love the way children teach the human heart, not just the brain. If you want to look up some of the work I've been doing lately, there's a really wonderful podcast and thing called Padre and Pritch with Monsignor Harry Schlitt, who recently passed away on Thanksgiving Day. But there's 40 episodes of his incredible wisdom and heart and in his love of humanity. He ran a thing called God Squad. Then I am also working with the neurodiverse community. And that means that you might have ADD, dyslexia, a form of autism, all on spectrum, OCD, ODD, all these things that we have to teach and learn ourselves, because the brain is very neurodiverse. What I know is when I'm working with children is how amazing they are at teaching things that teach us how to, kind of sometimes slow the brakes and not judge so much, because we need to get to understand how their brain processes stuff. That's for all of you in business, all of you in employment, all of you that teach speakers bureaus, because when you're teaching people to speak, there's high levels of anxiety before people get up. And if they're neurodiverse and they're acting, you'll see that we are now able to get many of the young actors to take care and practice self-care, because it's so urgently needed because of depression levels, isolation, feelings of woundedness. And this is what lowers, if you can picture this, the crime rate, because we're more, not less, attuned to grief, trauma, hurt, pain, sorrows, things that exacerbate the violence in our community. So that all said, I'm going to start telling you about children and why they're so powerful and so important to us as a group and as individuals. And I'm so honored to do this in front of our group, because if there's any group in the world that that represents what San Francisco is all about. It's our group. We're diverse, capacitated, and we're different languages, backgrounds, cultures, and playing all over. So let me start with kids. I'm talking little kids, and they're so smart. They're quicker than they've ever been. I have a neurodiverse little grandson I love, Cosmos Dimitrovich Bakinin. He's Russian Irish. Either way, he's gonna like poutine or vodka, I'm sure. But what? Hopefully not too much. But what I'm saying is that when you think about life, you think about him. And I was talking about how we can celebrate in families, learning how to help our grandkids and our kids, because sometimes, truthfully, we are better grandparents than we ever were parents. And that, I promise you, is true, because we're more conscious of time and what we can do to help make things better on planet Earth as a form of prayer, leaving Earth better off through the grandkids and the kids that we need to take time to be with. So I'm talking to a little kid and I go, don't overstand people, understand people. And the little kid goes, yeah, but Mr. Mike, what about understanding? Don't you think as well we need understanding? And I went, wow. A little kid can teach me more than all of my college professors, because that is truly what we seek in life, understanding ourselves so that we can understand others and not overstand others and judge. Or, the great line by Mother Teresa is, if you judge people, you'll never have time to learn to love them. Love them. Love them well, she said, which means love them till they're better. Help them in many ways. When they're lonely, when they're isolated, don't walk past lonely people. Don't hear a person who's lonely speak and not do everything you possibly can to reach out to them, to let them know you're there for them, and that if they need, call. That is when we're at our best. So with little kids, when I was teaching about, we have had so much violence, many shootings, and I worked many of those school shootings for many, many years. I think one of the first shootings that you might remember was the Cleveland school shooting in Stockton. That was one of my first incidences with seeing that kind of stuff. And people say, well, how do you stay up? How do you keep joyful? And how do you compartmentalize to the point where you can help others? Well, that has to do with the inner workings, the understanding of the human spirit. We have to maintain a positivity. As I was talking to young kids, I said, try the word optimist, stoic belief in optimism. And he said, yeah, but Mr. Mike, we're millennials. We live in a constant state of disappointment. I go, well, whoa, bro, how do we build hope in the disappointment? If you always assume that everything bad is going to happen, what good can come of that? It's not good. It's cynical. And a cynic, as Oscar Wilde said, is someone who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. And sarcasm comes from the Greek term, the tearing of flesh off the human spirit. And if we're doing that, if we're pouring that out on others, we're doing the most damage to ourselves. Mark Twain said, if you contain those things, the acidics in them are very disastrously destructive to the human spirit. That makes sense. So I think that optimism, that positivity, that laughter, that joy, that sensibility that the little kids can teach you. I'm always laughing around the little kids. And the other day I was correcting my grandson, who's 5, and he's the sweetest little empathic kid. I said, watch your tone. Watch your tone. Because you want to make friends. You're in kindergarten now. So watch how you speak to people. Don't speak angry. Speak lighthearted. And even when you might be angry because you're being treated wrongly, try and speak with the soft tone of respect and decency. And I thought, wow, he looked at me and he seemed to absorb it. And a little while later, he was licking the icing off the cupcakes that my wife, Mary Jo, his grandma made. And she caught him and she started yelling at him. And he goes, Grandma, soften your tone. No. Talk about that's ooh, that wasn't a good thing to have happen. And yet it was that laughter that I came to about myself and not taking myself too seriously. But These kids are sent to us. There's a generation of young people coming to us filled with hope and optimism and love and kindness and connection. And they're seeing, trust me when I tell you, they're seeing all the cruelty in the world, but they're choosing not to become angry, vitriolic, judgmental, cruel, ruthless, cold, indifferent. Dr. Martin Luther King said, we seek most in life. We seek most in life to be kind to others. And he said, there'll come a time in your life when you can do the right thing or look the other way. If you look the other way, you're already dead. Come to this by saying to yourself, if I keep my spirit alive, I am respectful, kind, thoughtful, decent, and I am inclusive to other people. I respect all religions and cultures and languages. And I think to myself, why would we need to teach that so much? Because kids are better teachers than adults. I said to a little kid, what did you learn today by what I said about anger? And he goes, don't let their bad day be your bad day or your bad day be their bad day. Don't play angry tag with people. How many of us find ourselves the victim of words used against us that hurt, that wound, that make us feel sad inside? And that grief can build to resentment and anger. And that anger and resentment can build to violence. So all we're talking to all of us about is the human heart. Mother Teresa said, if you judge people, you'll never have time to learn to love them. A great teacher by the name of Helen Keller said, oh, it must be hard for you to be blind. And she said, well, of course it would be if I had no religion and if I had no feelings and if I had no vision. And what she's saying to all of us is spirituality. Don't judge people through the eyes of somebody that's harshly weaponizing judgment, but speak from a softer generation of intimate inclusion and understanding for the greater good. When we're on the streets, and when I've been on the streets, and I mean, it gets frustrating. I get it, folks. I get the levels of poverty out there. But here I was the other day trying to teach a lesson of life to my little grandson, and I saw a homeless man. Now, he's 80 years old, and he's on an island by the Big Five sports store right by my house. And all I had was a $5 bill in my console. And I reached over and I gave it to him. And I said, here's the thing. Sir, come here. Do something good with this, not something bad. Don't buy tobacco or alcohol. Just do something good, okay? And he goes, God bless you. And I rolled the window up. And as I did, it was a toss away. I go, have a good day, Jesus. And I rolled the window up and I got back to the wheel. And my grandson in the back seat goes, Grandpa, that was not Jesus. I go, well, yes, Braun, I know that wasn't Jesus. But if we treat everybody like that, then Jesus would feel us. That's what I think, because I'm an Irish Catholic with a rosary in my pocket, buddy. I hope you get it. And I drove a little while longer, and this little 5-year-old empathic child in the sweetest voice goes, Grandpa? I go, yeah, buddy. Looking in the rearview mirror. What do you need? And he goes, Grandpa, I actually get it. I think in my heart that we are raising a whole generation of a new harvest of wisdom and spiritual brilliance coming our way. And we must evolve to that. You have seen the cruelty and the sadness and the levels of violence in our country. And it's really best well answered by all of us in each individual heart making a choice, as we talked earlier. And that is to make a choice to believe in the goodness and kindness. At the end of the Civil War, a great writer by the name of Longfellow wrote this poem. And in despair, I'd hang my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song. Peace on earth, goodwill to men. But then I heard the bell peal loud and deep. God is not dead, nor does he sleep, The wrong shall fail and the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to all. And in those words, we must realign ourselves back to the healing after a civil war. As President Grant, Ulysses Grant said, everybody wanted to fight. Everybody wanted a civil war until we began to bury drummer boys. There are consequences to anger and violence. There are consequences to not allowing your grief to be assessed. A great writer, when we talk about where this violence is coming from, one time said, and this was in Shakespeare, always give sorrow words, grief that does not speak whispers to the overfraught heart and bids it to break. We know that tears that do not flow will make other organs weep inside of us. We get sad, and the sad turns to anger, and the anger to rage, and the rage can turn into people crying with bullets instead of tears. We must, as a nation, as a community unity effort, do everything to understand the neurodiverse, the lonely, the isolated, the mentally challenged folks in the world who need our love. I've been working with a group created by a tragic accident, and it is called Grant's Crusade. You can Google and look at what we do, and you can see many of the videos that we do about neurodiversity taught by Stanford University's Dr. Fung. And neurodiverse and neuroplasticity are the way we study the brain to learn that even in later life, all of us at the age, many of us are, we can become fabulous ambassadors of love and compassion and connection and success in teaching things to younger people. Sometimes we should go skip a generation and go to the very young generation. Spend time with them because they will fill your heart with a hope that I can't describe, because I do it every day, laughing with them. And they're smart about so many things, wise, I would say, wise, brain wise, heart smart. And so if we find those things that we can do to uplift the human spirit in each and every individual, and all of us, like our group has for 40 years, I remember going out on the deck of one of on the Coral Sea and the Carl Vinson, and we had a big band out there. We were celebrating. We were watching the F-16s launch. And all these admirals and gentlemen, they were all gathered with our community members who were on board visiting as we were at sea. And it was remarkable to see the appreciation that they had, that Golden Gate Breakfast Club had brought to what our young sailors and soldiers and Marines and Coast Guard folks have to deal with on a daily basis, and to intermingle with them and get to know them, and get to see their hearts and why they do what they do, why they volunteer, and why they enlist, and why they become that, because they want to protect us and the wellness of our community. So often it's lost on other folks who condemn war. And yet at the same time, if you think about what's just happened recently as we were talking, nobody thought when the military was strong that they were going to be needed. And you heard so many folks yelling that this budget wasn't needed. And now we see, in a repeat of the sadness of World War II, a war in Europe that decimates the human spirit and pours hurt into the Ukrainian hearts of grandmothers and their grandkids. We wisely choose to do what we can to help them defend themselves. And I think that when I was thinking about this, we see these atrocities. Ike Eisenhower one time said, I don't think when my kids were at D-Day at Normandy Beach, they understood what we were fighting for. But when we got to Auschwitz and Dachau and Mauthausen, we knew exactly what we were fighting against: hatred, coldness, ruthless cruelty, anger, and hostility. That is not of us. That's not who we've ever been in America. And nor should we ever allow it or embrace it. And what we should do is everything we can as a human effort to be loving and kind and careful in how we speak to each other. I think so much for me, my great grandfather and all of my ancestors who came from Ireland taught me to love the community I live in, and to take care of its denizens and the people that are here, to love them, to be compassionate towards them. It's why I enlisted to be a medic in the military and take care of wounded, because it meant so much to me to do what I could to save other people's lives. And I've continued that effort for 55 straight years of employment, working as a probation officer and then working with kids all over America on PBS. What I guess I most learned, and that I want all of us, because I'm not necessarily being all that funny today, but I think with the violence levels we have to be so honest and loving to each other, so kind, so thoughtful, so pump the brakes compassionate, that we make sure that those folks who are suffering might be included. I'm not for the left wing and I'm not for the right wing. I'm taking care of the suffering wing of America. And I see it in its eyes, painted sorrows on faces that are hard bitten and worn from hurt, from mental illness, and from challenges of neurodiversity and isolation and starvation and hurt and pain. It can be said, I think more than anything else, that no matter how rich and powerful you are, how important you get to be, on the day you die, the size of your funeral still depends on the weather that day. We don't take it with us. Many of the folks would tell you that the pharaohs of Egypt thought they were taking it with them, but it's actually at the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose. It doesn't go with you. Who we are and what we have, what we possess, to show others the temple of me, to produce that feeling in your heart that you think is significant, that this is what I have done, is not as important as the love you share with one grandkid, one neurodiverse child who's suffering and wounded, one person, like in Grant's Crusade, when we say, seek to reach out to those so that they might understand us. There's a poem that I work at this camp, and every year I say this poem, and I love it. It's St. Dorothy's Rest up, and it's for cancer patients, and it's been a significant part of my life working with kids. And there's a poem that goes, "Oh, the winds of God are blowing, so keep your sails unfurled. And the winds of God will take you to the safe harbors of your world. Forever full of power to take you where you will, forever full of grace if there are sails to fill. So take the helm, be master, unfurl your sail, your part, and the winds of God will take you to the safe harbors of your heart." In my life, the heart has been the call. I lend my energy to my community as a form of love and respect and prayer to others. And I believe that that will bring us world peace, and it will help us in so many ways. That if we take time to be gentle to each other, embrace each other, and even in COVID, the other day, I will share this as my last story. I spoke at a senior's home. And I realized that there was so much isolation, that when I was telling my stories, I was doing my John Wayne imitations and all that stuff. I was done, and an elderly woman walked up and said, "Might I have a hug? I have lost my husband 3 months ago to COVID, and I have a belief that he sent your energy to me because I miss him so much, and you are just like him in optimism and love and compassion and spirituality." And I looked up and I said, "Hey, God, I think I'm going to need a mulligan here because I have to hug her. No matter what my condition is, she has to be hugged." And so I hugged her. I did not get COVID. I got a stronger feeling of the spiritual connection in human beings when they get lonely or isolated, and they need us so much. And it costs us nothing to be kind. And it gives us all the grace that is ours to bear when we are given that gift back from the great power of the higher power. Love one another and take care of each other, and be that Christmas present that you wish to other people. Be that to yourself as well, as when you give those gifts of yourself to others. Be the gift for yourself as well. Do your best to cheer yourself up. I said to the little kid, I said, "Do you think sometimes you're too hard on yourself?" And he goes, Well, I am, but I try not to take it personally. The gift is to love. And don't get so self-important that you think that's the most important thing, is amassing or putting things together. When you know this, I was on a podcast the other day, I talked about Leo Buscaglia, who was the most loving man on PBS. And he said, I had a man come to me and he goes, I'm angry at God. And I went, what an ego. Yeah, like, oh, look, God doesn't have anything else to do but worry about you got your lip burnt by your latte. Folks, gentle out there. And know that there are millions and millions of Americans who love you like I do and care about your kids and you firemen and you cops and you young military folks. We're out there, and when you're not hearing us, you're not listening hard enough to the prayers that we have for your hearts, for all you do for us, and all the love you show and the actions when you risk and maybe lose your life to defend us. So we pray for all of you at Christmas, at Kwanzaa, Ramadan, at Hanukkah, that we as a community celebrate each other's lives, uplift and shift and gift everyone in the community you come in contact. Look into their eyes and let them know you care. And that will be enough for them to feel the blessing of the winter solstice, when in its coldest, we become the warmest. This message was brought by the Holy Spirit. It wasn't me speaking. I just feel sometimes that we need to say these things to each other. And sometimes they come from a place I am unfamiliar with, but I pray to all the time. May you all have a blessed season and know how much we all love you and care about you and your kids and your grandkids, and be that for others. Thank you. Breakfast Clubbers. Honored to
All
be
right,
with
thank
you.
you. Everybody come off mute to round of applause.
Michael, I have a question.
Awesome.
All right,
Awesome.
we'll start with the questions. Ricky, you can be first, and if you raise your hand, I'll call on you, and you're welcome to put your question in the chat if you want as well. So take it away, Ricky.
Michael, when I look at Vladimir Putin, I see a guy that's about as crazy as a junkyard dog. And having just recently read his latest biography, he shared the same bedroom with his parents until he was 25 years old. And I believe that's still affecting him today. So given your perspective of understanding the recent unpleasantness in Southeast Asia, do you think that our country is capable of giving them the support they need to make a difference? Or are we looking at another quagmire here?
No, Rick, I really do believe our nation is really fully prepared. I think we have consolidated very recently. We have consolidated many of our forces, and we're trying to figure out. One of the big things is technology, Rick. It's changed everything in warfare. It's a completely different type of warfare. And the technology companies that are involved in this, I think you can have a person. I don't know if you read much about Mussolini, but Mussolini was a bully when he was 12 years old, Rick. And he stabbed a kid in his classroom, and nobody held him accountable when he was 12. Then he became, if you go through his history, he was a communist first, but that wasn't enough power, so he went to fascism, and then started to intimidate and bully and be that to other people. So unaddressed bullying, teasing, tormenting, ridicule, without having a way to try and help harmonize them into a sense of community, leaves that isolate into a sociopathic tendency, which means if they gather power, a sociopath can get very scary. And as seen by Hitler and Mussolini and many individuals who guide towards the darker regions of inhumanity, we know that our freedom, our life depends on the connection of our community to love and compassion. And we've got forces out there, I promise you, Rick, that were just like you were when you were doing your work in overseas. And I was doing my work in the school systems. Good, kind, loving persons who love us and would give and risk their lives for us as well.
Thank you, Michael. I pray you're right.
Thanks, sir. Stay optimistic. Stoic.
Next question. I think Patricia, did I see your hand raised? No? Okay. Anybody else got a question for Mike?
Well, I was just, I don't know, I was showing my enthusiasm for Ricky. However, hearing about Leo Buscaglia, I remember years ago we were on the same convention together, and we both were in the same car driving us to the airport at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Ah,
And Leo Buscaglia, who of course was a man who shared a message of love, he got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and broke his toe. He hit something, broke his toe, but he said, well, my next audience are surgeons, so I'll get someone to look at it there. A practical note, I now travel with night lights in my little travel bag, so in hotel rooms I have travel lights rather than leaving the light on in the bathroom with the door slightly open. So but Mike, always wonderful to hear from you. I would like you to tell us a story. Let's go back to early in your life, the Holy City Zoo, where Robin and so many people got this start. Tell us a funny story from those days.
When I was young and I was a probation officer, I used to stand there and I used to laugh so hard. I would tell everybody that you can't write material like the kids at juvenile hall would give. We had a lineup at juvenile hall. Accidentally, the victim of the crime walked past the lineup I had set up and walked past the lineup. And so I was like flabbergasted to see that one of the kids jumped out of the lineup and pointed at the woman by accident walking past with the public defender and goes, oh, I know her. She's the one I robbed. I go, shut up. She picked you out of the lineup. You don't pick her out of the lineup. I never had to write material. I just sat there thinking of how much fun I had with the kids, and they would make you laugh so hard. I would say, I always taught them that John Wayne line, which was, life is tough, but it's a lot tougher when you're stupid. You can't find a better line on education than John Wayne. And that was in Sands of Iwo Jima with the Marine Corps. It was hilarious. So I think that the Holy City Zoo was a very wonderful launching pad for me. But once I got into show business, I really wanted to get back to my great love of helping kids and leaving show business behind and then going on to working with children all over the world. It's been great.
Great. Thank you so much. Great question. Anastasia raised her hand, then Betty, and then Susan.
Yes, thank you, Mike. That was amazing, touching, funny, all of the above. I am inspired by the work that you're doing. I am curious, in the beginning, you were talking about working basically with kids and helping them with their voice, in essence. You were talking about the power of learning how to share their stories and messages and give them self-confidence, etc. Is that also the Grants Crusade, or was that something different? That
is Grants Crusade, and much of the work I do at Halleck Creek Ranch, where we take neurodiverse kids and we put them on horses for equine therapy. And at Grants Crusade, we're getting dogs that are well trained to help the neurodiverse kids. If you go up on our website and look, we're doing this globally. We're helping poor families, wealthy families. We're helping all families we can. And it was to help a man who had an accident with his child and lost him, and now is doing everything he can to honor him in the right way globally. And he's a very wealthy and privileged man, but he's got a great, true, good heart.
That's
Javier
awesome.
Burillo Azcárraga is his name, and it's Grant's Crusade, and it's after his son, Grant Azcárraga. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Beautiful work. But what was the part that you were talking about them speaking, in essence? You also were talking about that.
Oh, I do a thing with, I'm also helping young people because I am on a board for what you call human trafficking. And we're helping young victims of human trafficking speak out to tell other children, to warn them that this is a real thing that can happen. It can happen to you. And when you have suffering kids in the community who might have been abducted or used or enslaved or taken, it's really important for us to teach them how to speak out about being a victim of this, so that we can amplify and help other people not only understand it, but not overstand it. And that helping all those neurodiverse kids find their voice. I love doing that. I get them up. Many times they'll come up. I was at Pismo Beach and one of the kids goes, I'm a high functioning Asperger autistic, and a lot of you who call me the school loser, the school loner, and the school shooter, but you don't know my heart. And you should get to know me, and you should get to learn to be my friend, because chances are ever increasing you might have a kid like me one day. And then what will you do?
Wow.
I went, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to say anything more, right? Because the truth is, if we teach ourselves that everyone we look at is us and we are everyone to them as well. So be kind, be the not the fear mirror, but the kind mirror of loving, compassion, connection. And that's why I love Leo Buscaglia, because this is how he made his career, talking about what love can do for a nation and a community.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Tache and then Susan Rowan.
Michael, thank you for your wonderful presentation, but everything you say, it has such wisdom in it. Every comment, every sentence. Two questions. One of them is, how did you actually start your path? And the second question is, you talk about children, but then you mentioned also the seniors who are so lonely. And how can we get more high school kids to go in and interview seniors and make them feel special, almost like a pen pal or a whatever in the seniors facilities or in your neighborhood?
I love that question. I worked with Bread and Roses for almost 45 years for Mimi Farini and Joan Baez's sister. And we do music, theater, art, and comedy inside senior homes, prisons, and jails. And so every one of the times I can find somebody to come and speak to them or get them to speak to each other, it's a remarkable thing, because sometimes when I'm performing and singing with the band at one of the senior homes, they remember every song that we start singing. You know, we start did them why don't you, and they swam all over that damn, and the brain triggers and they start singing with you, and they're 95 and they're singing and they revitalize in the brain. It's called neuroplasticity, folks. There's a reservoir of wisdom sitting in seniors that we need to tap into and help our kids tap into. And we need to learn that just as much as we do anything else about the human heart. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. And then the first question was, how did you start when you were in grammar school, high school? How did you take your path, or many paths?
I was a kid. My father was an Army officer. My mother was a school teacher, and I was very neurodiverse. And it was undiagnosed in these days. Nobody knew what attention deficit disorder hyperactivity was, you know. But it resided within me and amplified joy and the ebullient, emotional, empathic efforts that I would have for my classmates, even in elementary school, at Catholic school. I just loved them. I loved being alive. I loved praying, and I loved being with friends and laughing and having fun. And I just took that into my work after I was a medic. One of the jobs I had was cheering guys up who were wounded and to take care of their hearts and to get them. And you know, my first question was, what can I do to make you more comfortable? I've said that for years in hospices and to wounded guys. And even when I go in and do USO shows, what can I do to make you more comfortable? And most times it's just make me laugh, just be with me, just hang out. And that's what I did. And I used to take Robin Williams with me and do this, and we'd laugh. And so I was in comedy. And then when I got into comedy, it was totally unintentional. one of the kids at juvenile hall said, "Hey, you need to go down to the Holy City Zoo, big dog. They got all them famous comedians down there. They'd love you." So I went down to 6th and Clement, as Pat was talking, where my friend John Cantu was, and I fell in love with all the comedians and stuff. And I did it for a while. I won the comedy competition. I went on a Johnny Carson show, and I went on an episode of Taxi that did quite well. And I signed a contract with NBC for $100,000. None of it was intentional. And it was very helpful to my family because we wanted to buy a home, and we did, and to stabilize and have kids. And I love having my own kids, and then the many kids that we took in over the years who we helped out. That alone, that effort taught me so much wisdom from being with kids who were traumatized. They call it adverse childhood experiences, ACE. And there's a test you can take that helps. And the FBI has been great about this. Mary Ellen O'Toole, I always tell Bill Buchanan when I see him that without the FBI and their efforts to learn more about the human brain to help with crime behavior, we would be lost souls. And so that was part of my journey. And then I started on PBS. And here's what I can tell you about corporate America. They are awesome. They help me so much. If they respect you, they will do everything to help you amplify your message. And I had a large corporation give me $1.5 million to shoot my first PBS series called The Power of Choice, making sure kids know about choice. And that's what took me then. I just went right back to kids. And I will never leave it, because sometimes early in the morning at like 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm in a kindergarten doing a show, and I hear that laughter. And it is the medicine of a human soul's redemption.
Cool. Thank you so much, Mike. Susan Rowan, followed by Alan Garber with questions.
Okay.
And then
Well,
Buchanan.
Mike, I have a friend that worked at YGC with you, Bill Johnston, and from what
Billy Boy, yeah, I love him.
he actually retired as acting director, but he said this about you, for those of you that want to know his trajectory. The people at Youth Guidance Center working in some dire situations laughed because Mike Pritchard made them laugh all the time. So this is just natural for you. But I want to correct you on something. You said you left show business. No, you haven't. You are in show business. You show us how to be better. You show the world how to embrace the kids and their spirit and their differences. So you are still in show business. And you make me very grateful that I grew up and paid attention to the fact I had a brother that had polio. So I saw how people treated people. And I hope I bring that to other things. But thank you. I took pages notes, great quotes. I am going to be quoting you on Twitter until Elon bumps me off. So thank you.
Well, send this to Elon. Maybe he'll lighten up. That'll be good for him.
All right. Thank you, Susan. Alan Garber, and then Bill Buchanan.
Hi, Mike. You used this expression or this term neurodiverse. And so I'd like you to, as succinctly as possible, define that term for me.
There's Dr. Fung. You can look at they have a beautiful graph up, sir, from if you Google Dr. Fung, Stanford, neurodiversity, there's a beautiful explanation of what it is and what it entails. And there's a whole circle of folks who have in their background that it creates anxiety from their early childhood traumas and the neurodiversity. And then in addition, because I know this, you are a genius. And the neuroplasticity is that even in senior years, we can do things that astound ourselves. Ask Benjamin Franklin, because in his later years, he exploded with more inventions, more ideas, and more creative things to do. And that neuroplasticity is explained by Dr. David Eagleman from Stanford and Dr. Andrew Huberman. And you can Google both of them and read up on all of this neurodiversity and how we're helping, because they were neurodiverse learners. And then when they found out how they learned, they flowed through the system, creating great ideas and innovations. If you wanted to see something that would help you on a movie, one would be called The Imitation Game, about Alan Turing. He created the first Enigma code. He cracked the code and saved 20 million lives. He was a very neurodiverse, Asperger, high-functioning autistic. And then the other one is called The Electrical Life of Louis Wayne. Both of them played brilliantly by Benedict Cumberbatch, and he does well in explaining neurodiversity in movies to other people. So those would be my recommendations for you to learn about. That if you watch both those movies, both The Imitation Game and The Electrical Life of Louis Wayne, you will see how the neurodiverse brain has to try and adjust itself in the old days in history of America, and how we've gotten better at accepting people's neurodiversity, sir. And that would be ADD, ODD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, which can come from being so wounded. You become angry because you're so wounded. For me, in school, I never had above a C. I never had above a C the whole time I was in high school and college. But if you called on me to go take a gun off a kid in an alleyway, I'd have no fear. If you called me to go in and rescue somebody who'd been wounded or shot, I have no fear. And yet, I was not well accomplished in the intellectual games at taking tests, but I had a wisdom of the heart that still sings within me every day. I hope that helps.
What was the name of that first doctor you said at Stanford?
Dr. Andrew Huberman. His story is remarkable. He was a young kid whose father was a Stanford professor that kind of left the family, and it was his struggle as a young kid to deal with his mom's depression. It's a remarkable story. And Andrew Huberman and David Eagleman, both brilliant men on brain research, and helpful to Robin Williams' widow, Susan Williams, who's done some incredible work raising consciousness for the biomarkers to get help.
Cool.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Yep.
you. Bill
Thank
Buchanan,
you.
you're next.
Mike, welcome back to the Breakfast Club. I was telling Claire this morning, I said, it wouldn't be a holiday season without Mike Pritchard. I mean, you're missing your menorah and you're missing your Christmas tree. If Mike's not there, it's not a holiday season. Anyway, so thanks so much for being with us. Last week, I invited our Mill Valley Police Chief to coffee, as I do occasionally. And the first thing that came up was the suicide of Sean Christopher, who was a police officer in Tiburon. And I looked at Rick and I said, what the heck? He said, I don't know. And I said, okay, let's have a discussion about this. I mean, I'm involved with Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem, which is focused on helping military veterans and all that sort of thing. But anyway, I said, were there any signs? And he said, not that I know of. And he served on the Marin County Sheriff's, organization with Sean. I said, he had an enviable career, a stable family. So what I'm asking you is, have you had, I presume you have had experience with first responders, law enforcement, military, the suicide question. My question is, how in the heck do you spot something like that before it happens? It's one thing to go over and console the family, but it's too late, Well, I just wonder if you have any observations on that, Mike.
My first call just the other day, as they called into me, was to Chief Ryan Monahan, who's been a close personal family friend for years. I watched him grow up. He was a kid when I first watched him. They used to come to my show because my wife was roommates with his aunt when I first got here. The Monahans are a great Irish Catholic family down in San Mateo. And what I can say is that I reached him and I said, first of all, we can't blame ourselves. One of the autistic kids taught me that blame is me at the end of blah, blah, blah. So there is no blame and there is no shame in this as well. What we have to do is deal with what is. Life isn't fair, but we can be fair. And one of the things I've done over the years with many of the suicides I've dealt with is just be is awfully kind to the family. When we have a person killed in the line of duty or we have a suicide in the line of duty, gentle to make sure their families, their kids get the right message from all of us in the law enforcement and first responders community, the military community, that we know that they need our love and our respect. And if their person, maybe the person who took their life doesn't really know. Sometimes it's an impulse, sir. And I've dealt with the Marine Corps kids a lot on this as well. Sometimes making sure they don't have the wisdom of triggers, knowing what's going to set you off, what's going to irritate you, what's going to make you do impulsive things, and try to track that down. But the greatest thing, and this is it, the emotional heart to lend empathy and compassion. And I disagree with you, Bill. It's never too late to extend our life, even when they are gone. When we do that, we're showing what we should be doing all the time. If that makes sense to you, we should treat each other the way we're treating his family now, and we should have treated him that way. Sometimes words can wound so deeply, and indifference and there's an old line I love by Hyman Rickover, sir. And as a Marine, you'll understand, an admiral understanding this. He said, he goes, if you're going to sin against God, not the bureaucracy, at least God will forgive you. And the wisdom of that is in knowing that we should all try to make sure the systems that we work within are empathic to the individual's love and compassion and need. And I ask everybody to hold a prayer for Will Durst and for young Sean Christopher, because it's in that and their families that the mysteries of life and compassion, they align us to a better world.
Thanks for everything you're doing, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Love you. Appreciate you. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.